It's November 26, 2018, and it's time to review 5 of the most outrageous, infuriating, or just plain baffling things that have happened lately. It's your Facepalm 5. Let's count them down. Number 1. Troops deployed to defend against migrant caravan already coming home. My fellow Americans, remember before the election when the President of the United States deployed active-duty military personnel to our southern border to protect our nation against an invading army of homeless refugees? Never mind. Last week, the general in charge of the border deployment told Politico that some of the nearly 6,000 troops sent to the border before the election are already headed home, and they should all be home before Christmas. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy the troops are coming home. They never should have been deployed in the first place. It was a cynical stunt. And the fact that so many aggressively pro-military Trump supporters seem completely okay with it only testifies to how much more important their racism and xenophobia is to them. The fact that the troops are being sent back home now, just as the migrant caravan we were all supposed to be so afraid of is reaching the US-Mexico border, confirms what a useless bit of political theater this deployment was. According to Politico, most of the active-duty troops sent to the border were unarmed and were only included in the deployment at all in order to satisfy a demand by Trump that the border reinforcements include more than the National Guard. The general who spoke with Politico also confirmed that the Trump administration had requested armed active-duty troops be deployed, a request which the Pentagon rejected, explaining that Border Patrol is a form of law enforcement and the military is not allowed to conduct law enforcement operations within our borders. It's nice to know that the leaders of the military know enough to follow the rules, even when the civilian authorities, who are supposedly in charge, keep asking them to break those rules, because that's how this is all supposed to work. The forbearance of the military, keeping us from sliding into full-on authoritarianism, while the president remains clueless and/or indifferent to the laws and norms that define and limit the role of the military, and the legislature looks on impotently. Right? Number 2, right-wingers are obsessed with Congress member-elect Ocasio-Cortez. Speaking of the legislature, one of the most high-profile candidates swept into office by the blue wave is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who will represent New York's 14th congressional district beginning January 3rd. Unfortunately, though not surprisingly, not all of the attention attracted by Ocasio-Cortez has been positive. Some of it has been downright creepy. Week before last, Eddie Scarry, a writer for the Washington Examiner, tweeted a photo someone took of Ocasio-Cortez from behind as she walked down a hallway with the caption, "I'll tell you something, that jacket and coat don't look like a girl who struggles." I guess Ocasio-Cortez didn't get the memo that working-class people are supposed to dress down when they get elected to Congress to keep them from mixing too easily with the swells. It's not just her inappropriately nice wardrobe that's elicited reactions. Her practice of live streaming on Instagram to answer questions, talk about policy, and share her experiences as she prepares to take office has drawn mockery from the likes of Sean Hannity and Sarah Palin, who pounced on Ocasio-Cortez when she mistakenly referred to the presidency, the Senate, and the House of Representatives as the 3 branches of government. A mistake she acknowledged as a slip of the tongue due to her speaking extemporaneously, and the sort of thing that I would not be going out of my way to give her shit about if I were Sarah Palin, who couldn't even answer a question about which newspaper she reads. But maybe that's just me. If I were Sarah Palin. Number 3, Christian group demands justice for missionary killed while trespassing on Forbidden Island. Last week, authorities in India reported that an American man, John Allen Chow, was killed by the inhabitants of a remote island during an apparent attempt to convert them to Christianity. The island is North Sentinel Island, or at least that's what we call it. It's located in the Bay of Bengal between India and Myanmar. We don't know what the people who live there call the island because contact with them has been extremely limited. The people of North Sentinel Island don't welcome outsiders, probably because of a visit they received from Maurice Portman, a British colonial official who landed on the island in 1880 and abducted an elderly couple and a group of children. Most subsequent attempts to contact the North Sentinel Islanders have been met with hostility, and I don't wonder why. North Sentinel is one of the Andaman Islands, and as such is considered, again by those of us who don't live on North Sentinel Island, to be under the authority of the government of India. Indian law forbids anyone from going within 5 kilometers of the island. John Allen Chau was aware of this prohibition and chose to go anyway, risking not only his own life, but also the lives of the North Sentinel Islanders, who could die from exposure to diseases against which they have no natural immunity. Now, a missionary organization, the International Christian Concern, has released a statement accusing the North Sentinel Islanders of murder and demanding that those responsible for killing Chau be brought to justice. The ICC also attempted to tie the killing of Chau in with other recent acts of violence and persecution against Christians in India. I want to emphasize that while North Sentinel Island is legally considered to be a territory of India, the North Sentinel Islanders are not Indians in any meaningful sense of that term. They are a completely separate and isolated community. The killing of John Allen Chau was not part of a larger trend of persecution and violence against Christians in India. It had nothing to do with that. And it was the fault of no one but Chau himself and the people who helped him travel to North Sentinel Island, who have been arrested, by the way, and rightly so. The North Sentinel Islanders have made it abundantly clear that they want to be left alone. And the government of India has made it equally clear that it intends to protect the autonomy and the privacy of the islanders, which is exactly what it ought to do. John Allen Chau had no right, legally or morally, to approach that island. The fact that he hoped to visit the island to proselytize changes nothing. Your desire to promote your religion does not entitle you to violate the privacy or endanger the lives of other people. And maybe we could all benefit from reminding ourselves of the lives lost, the resources plundered, and the cultures destroyed these last several centuries by people who claimed the right to invade, convert, and conquer indigenous people in the name of civilization and Christianity. Number 4, founder of white nationalist gang quits, denies being white nationalist. Last week it was reported that the FBI has classified the violent neo-Nazi gang, the Proud Boys, as an extremist group with ties to white nationalism. The next day, the founder and leader of the Proud Boys, Gavin McInnes, announced that he was quitting the gang, officially disassociating himself from the Proud Boys in all capacities forever. He added that he was doing so reluctantly because he believes it to be the greatest fraternal organization in the world. McInnes was apparently advised by his attorneys that quitting the gang would be helpful in obtaining lighter sentences for the 6 members of the Proud Boys arrested for assaulting protesters following a speech McInnes gave in New York City in October. McInnes also denied that the Proud Boys are a gang or an extremist group or have ties to white nationalists. It's not the first time McInnes has made such a denial, denying the blatantly obvious fact that they are a gang of violent white nationalists is something members of the Proud Boys have been doing since they were founded 2 years ago. Long before the FBI classified them as such, the Southern Poverty Law Center identified the Proud Boys as an extremist hate group whose members are known to promote white nationalist rhetoric and take part in events alongside other hate groups such as the Ku Klux Klan. McInnes himself has written for white nationalist websites such as American Renaissance and VDare, and has a history of making grossly racist, misogynistic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, and transphobic statements, and proudly exhibiting many other varieties of bigotry and intolerance as well. In other words, whatever McInnes chooses to call himself, his words and his actions demonstrate that he is a neo-Nazi scumbag, and he founded a gang for other neo-Nazi scumbags. That's who the Proud Boys are. That's who they will remain, whether McInnes is officially a member or not. And people who accept his denial of violence and white nationalist connections at face value are either liars or suckers. And wouldn't you know it, those two categories of people also account for all of the remaining supporters of the person who is the subject of the next segment. Because it's now time for the segment devoted to some of the other things Donald Trump has done recently to disgrace the presidency and embarrass and or endanger the United States and the rest of the world. It's number 5, the further misadventures of Lord Dampnut. Please keep in mind, as always, the following is not a complete list. He not only rejected the CIA's conclusion that Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman probably ordered the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, he lied about it, falsely claiming that the CIA's report did not conclude that Mohammed ordered the murder when, according to the Washington Post, that's precisely what the CIA has concluded. He also released a statement reaffirming the U.S.'s relationship with Saudi Arabia, a statement so poorly written that the humor website McSweeney's simply republished it without changing a word. Trump's statement begins with the one-sentence paragraph, "The world is a very dangerous place!" which reminds me of one of those over-eager forewords by my high school principal that they would always publish near the front of the yearbook. The difference is that in addition to being a mediocre writer, my high school principal was a kind and empathetic man who genuinely cared about his students and his faculty. I mean, he would paint classrooms and cover for teachers if they couldn't find a substitute, and he always had time to listen if you had a problem. He would go to almost every school sporting event, even though he didn't like sports. God, I wish my high school principal was president. Anyway, in his statement, Trump insists that he does not condone the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, then repeats the Saudi government's claim that Khashoggi was an enemy of the state, and reminds us that both the king and the crown prince vigorously deny any knowledge of or involvement in the Khashoggi murder. Well, okay then, I guess the entire international intelligence community is just wrong then, huh? I mean, hey, it's plausible because they've been wrong before, so they might be wrong now. So since there is some minuscule chance that they might be wrong now, we really have no choice but to distort or outright ignore their conclusions. And hey, if that means the Saudi government gets away with murder, it's kind of worth it, right? Because of all the money they spent buying weapons from us? And the great deals they give us on oil? Come on, murders are bad and all, I guess, but let's keep our priorities straight. If we didn't buy oil from Saudi Arabia, where would we get it? The same places we buy the other 89% of the oil we import? I mean, I guess, but what about the stimulus to our economy as a result of that massive deal Trump negotiated with the Saudis last year, which is actually not nearly as significant as Trump has made it out to be, and much of which had already been agreed to under the Obama administration. And if State Department estimates of the number of new American jobs that could be created as a result of Saudi business are accurate, it would still only be equivalent to a small fraction of the jobs that could potentially be lost due to Trump's tariffs. Oops, I got distracted. America first. I'm so glad we don't condone the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. Aren't you? Oh God, what else has he done lately? The New York Times reported that Trump wanted to order the Justice Department to prosecute James Comey and Hillary Clinton, but was talked out of it by the White House counsel, who explained that the president has no authority to order prosecutions. That's the sort of thing they do in dictatorships. The only thing stopping Trump from being a dictator is the people who work for him who tell him about the laws that say he can't be a dictator. The day before Thanksgiving, he tweeted, "Brutal and extended cold blast could shatter all records. Whatever happened to global warming?" If he's really curious what happened to global warming, maybe he should read the report his administration just released on Friday. He's got the same grasp of the basics of climate change as your shit-for-brains Fox News watching relatives. He doesn't know anything. And you can't teach him anything, because he thinks he knows everything. Is there more? Of course there's more, because I haven't even talked about what he did on Thanksgiving yet. What it was he got on a conference call with several military officers stationed around the world, Afghanistan, Kuwait, aboard the USS Ronald Reagan in the South China Sea. He asked the commander of troops in Afghanistan what kind of things he was seeing on the ground in terms of action against the enemy, which is the sort of thing military commanders don't discuss in televised phone calls. He tried unsuccessfully to get an officer to agree with him that steam-powered aircraft catapults are better than electromagnetic catapults. He complained about international trade, whined about how unfairly he felt he was being treated by the courts, and tried to equate his attempts to impose a brutal and racist border enforcement policy to the military fighting terrorists in Afghanistan. He did this while on the phone with American troops stationed overseas, I remind you. On Thanksgiving, while he sat in a room at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida. After the call ended, Trump spoke to reporters and repeated many of these same complaints and lies I've already talked about. At one point, someone asked him what he was thankful for, and he said, "For having made a tremendous difference in this country," adding, "I've made a tremendous difference in the country. This country is so much stronger now than it was when I took office that you wouldn't believe it." He's right, I wouldn't believe it, because it's not true. It's the pathetic, transparent, self-serving lie of a pathetic, transparent, self-serving man. You know, I was with my grandmother on Thanksgiving, and we watched some of Trump's call to the troops when CNN played some of it. And when that bit was over, Granny turned to me and she had this stupefied look on her face. And she said, "How much longer has he got?" And I said, "About 2 years, if he serves out his term." And Granny's eyes widened, and then she turned to look out the window. And I'll just say to you now what I said to her in that moment, which was, I hope we make it that long. That's 5. Speak out, act out, resist, look after each other. Hey folks, hope you got something out of this one. If you did, please click like and share the video and subscribe to this channel if you're not subbed already. And also, please consider helping me to make more videos like this one and like all the other videos I make by supporting this channel with a monthly donation through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron for as little as $1 a month. But if you can afford it and you think I'm worth it, if you pledge at a level of $5 a month or higher, you get yourself a shout out at the end of the Facepalm 5, just like these fine folks who are my newest $5 or more per month patrons. Bort City, thank you Bort City. James Dr. No from Russia with Love, Goldfinger, Thunderball, You Only Live, thank you James. Alexandros Hampson, thank you Alexandros. Isabel Taylor, thank you Isabel. Bo Breeden, thank you Bo. Aaron Harvey, thank you Aaron. David Hornall, thank you David. Lexi, thank you Lexi. Jocelyn Starling, thank you Jocelyn. And Martin Goligly, thank you Martin. Thanks to everybody who is a patron of this channel. However long you've been a patron and at whatever level you are pledging, I appreciate all of your support. And also those of you who aren't patrons but who watch the videos and like and share and do all the free forms of support, I appreciate your viewership and your support as well. I thank all of you for your support and I thank all of you for watching, and I'll see you next time.